the depths of a Roman dungeon, the flickering light of a torch glints against something sinister. Curved metal hooks, sharpened to cruel points, bound together in the shape of claws. Chains rattle, and a prisoner, trembling, is dragged forward. His eyes widen as he sees the device. To most, Rome is remembered for its legions, its emperors, its monuments of stone. But hidden in the shadows of that glory are objects like these, tools designed not for conquest, but for pain. This is the story of the iron claws of Rome, a device that history nearly forgot. They were not grand engines of war like catapults or ballistae. They were smaller, intimate, and far more terrifying. Their purpose was not to break walls, but to break men. What were they? Why did Rome use them? And how could something so brutal vanish into obscurity? Origins in a harsh world. The ancient world was not merciful. Rome inherited its punishments from older cultures, the Greeks, the Persians, even the Etruscans. Each believed that fear kept societies in order. Public executions, crucifixions, and torture were not merely punishments, they were lessons. The iron claws first appear in scattered references, most notably in accounts of Roman prisons and interrogation during the late Republic. Known as ungulae ferrae, literally iron talons, they were designed as extensions of the torturer's hand. Some were simple iron hooks, others resembled animal claws strapped to a gauntlet. In either form, their purpose was unmistakable: to tear flesh. Rome was a society obsessed with order and discipline. To the ruling class, pain was a weapon just as important as the sword. In times of war and rebellion, the claws found their place not on the battlefield, but in the chambers where captured enemies were questioned. Early uses in warfare and punishment. During the chaotic years of the Social War, 91 to 88 BCE, when Rome's Italian allies rose up demanding citizenship, interrogation became vital. Captured rebels were said to be dragged before magistrates and broken with fire, whips, and claws. The device was not always meant to kill outright. Instead, it inflicted wounds that shocked onlookers and shattered morale. In gladiatorial arenas, the claws sometimes appeared in cruel spectacles. Prisoners of war or condemned criminals were bound and raked with the hooks before being thrown to wild beasts. It was not combat, it was theater, Rome's way of reminding crowds who held power over life and death.
A symbol of Rome's ruthlessness. At the height of the empire, when emperors like Tiberius and Domitian ruled with paranoia, the iron claws became infamous. Ancient sources describe prisoners hung from wooden frames while executioners tore at their bodies with claws until flesh peeled away. The device was sometimes heated in fire so that every rake across the skin burned as it cut. In one chilling account, Christians accused of treason under Marcus Aurelius were torn with iron claws before execution. The purpose was not swift death, it was degradation. Each scream was a warning to others who dared defy Roman authority. For Rome, the claws were not merely instruments of pain, they were instruments of control. Every empire rules by fear as much as by loyalty, and in the shadows of marble temples and triumphant arches, These claws reminded subjects what rebellion meant. The imagery was deliberate. Rome often likened its enemies to beasts, wolves, lions, serpents. By using claws, executioners mirrored nature's most violent predators. The condemned were torn as if by wild animals, reducing them to prey. It was psychological warfare. In Roman literature and satire, the ungule became shorthand for cruelty. To be under the claws meant not just pain, but helplessness. The device captured the essence of Roman punishment: cold, methodical, efficient. But all empires evolve. By the late Empire, Rome itself was changing. Christianity spread through its cities, carrying with it a new view of suffering. Martyrdom gave victims of torture a kind of spiritual victory, turning the claws into symbols of Roman corruption rather than power. Gradually, methods of punishment shifted. Crucifixion was abandoned under Constantine in the 4th century. Torture itself did not vanish, but it took new forms, less theatrical, more hidden. The claws, once wielded openly as instruments of authority, began to disappear. Archaeology offers little. No preserved set of claws has ever been unearthed, though depictions survive in mosaics, reliefs, and written testimony. Iron corrodes, and many such devices were likely melted down, their history erased by time and rust. In the centuries that followed, other methods, racks, wheels, and branding irons took the stage. Compared to these, the claws were almost primitive. Yet their memory lingered, whispered in church texts, preserved in hagiographies describing the tortures of saints. To most Romans of the late Empire, they were no longer a weapon of fear, but a symbol of tyranny's cruelty.
Claws in modern imagination. Though the actual devices are gone, their legacy endures. Medieval torture chambers revived the imagery, crafting new versions like the iron hand and cat's paw. In modern times, films and novels often depict ancient tortures with hooks and claws, feeding our fascination with Rome's darker side. Even the language survives. In European folklore, to be in the claws of an oppressor became a common phrase. The metaphor still resonates. Claws, animal, monstrous, metallic, embody the idea of merciless power. Historians argue that such devices reveal a fundamental truth about Rome. Beneath the grandeur of its architecture and laws, the empire understood the human body as a battlefield. Every scar left by the claws was a message: resist, and you will be torn apart. What does this mean for us? Modern societies no longer display torture as theater, but the logic of fear remains. The iron claws remind us that power is often maintained not just by what is built, but by what is destroyed. They ask us how much of civilization rests on hidden violence. Conclusion. The iron claws of Rome are a shadow in history, rarely spoken of, seldom shown, yet deeply symbolic. They remind us that Rome's strength was not only its armies or roads, but its mastery of human psychology. By tearing flesh, it carved obedience. By displaying cruelty, it secured loyalty. And though the claws themselves have vanished, their story endures, not in museums of iron, but in the memory of those who suffered,
and in the uneasy fascination we feel even now. So the next time you look at Rome's triumphal arches or statues of emperors, remember, behind the marble stood iron, sharp and merciless. This was the Iron Claws of Rome, a torture device lost to history. If you found this story compelling, subscribe to our channel, share it with others, and join us as we uncover more of history's forgotten shadows.